On today's show, the Sacramento Kings finally trade De'Aaron Fox. The Dallas Mavericks speak for the first time since trading Luka Doncic, and we talk about every NBA game right here on Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's up, everybody? I'm Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs. He's Swipa from Locked On Nuggets. And thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts and YouTube as well. If you're watching, give us a thumbs up for us. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss the latest content from the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode, of course, sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And we have another trade. So Saturday night, early Sunday morning was the Luka Doncic trade. Mid-Sunday evening, I guess we'll call it, Swipe, but the De'Aaron Fox trade finally ends up in San Antonio after what was, I guess, that Luka Doncic-Anthony Davis exchange was the most secretive trade. Like, this was the most well-known trade that was going to happen, but it finally is out there. It's finally over with. We can finally talk about a real trade that has happened here.
It's funny, y'all. One day the NBA is completely silent. There's nothing going on. It looks like it's going to be one of the most boring trade deadlines in recent memory, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, is chaos. Nico Harrison, he just does us a favor. And he decides that he wants to go ahead and with him and his bestie, the way that I envision it, they were over at each other's house sharing a glass of wine. Like, would you be interested perhaps in trading our all NBA players? And they said, yeah, indeed, I might be. And then not to be outdone, the Sacramento Kings, they said, you know what, De'Aaron Fox, you're not going to re-sign. You're not going to guarantee that. Well, okay, we're going to get a haul for De'Aaron Fox and ship him out to San Antonio. And Danny, this is the thing I was hoping for San Antonio's sake. San Antonio had a ton of tremendous draft assets available, and they didn't touch their core to get the deal done. There were a lot of speculations, Danny, that they were trying to get the Sacramento Kings Stephon Castle off of them in order to make this work. There was also speculation among some people in which I was hoping they would not do it, to get off Devin Vassell. And they didn't have to give up either one of them. So you're telling me that I get De'Aaron Fox in my roster. I still have Devin Vassell. I still have Stephon Castle. I still have Jeremy Sohan. And I have Victor Wembanyama. Bruh, you want to talk about building the right way and getting an all-star guard that truly can excel around Victor Wembanyama. I love that trade for San Antonio. And I also really do think that the Kings, they got away with something here. Not got away as in a thievery or anything, but this is a really important deal. I think being able to get back Zach LaVine in this deal. And just to be clear, just for everybody understands how the trade went down. The Spurs got De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The Kings got Zach LaVine. They got Sissoko. They got three first-round picks, the 2025 Charlotte first-round pick, 2027 first-round pick from the Spurs, and 2031 first-round pick from Minnesota. And then they also got 3 second-round picks from 25 from Chicago, 28 from Denver, and then 28 their own pick back. And then the Bulls for Zach LaVine, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 pick back from San Antonio. I think two teams both got better in this deal, and one of them got no future assets, got no real assets on the roster, and just continued to look like one of the most incompetent franchises in the NBA.
Well, I know who you're talking about there in Chicago. I will say, I did think that Sacramento could get a little bit more back in terms of draft equity for De'Aaron Fox, especially when you mentioned that they didn't touch San Antonio's young core. Like, those guys all stayed put with the Spurs. But in reality, I look at that Spurs first-round pick that they got, the 2027 first-round pick. Unprotected is great, but Wemby's still going to be there. Like that Spurs team is still going to be intact. They should be much better than they are now. That's a pick that I look at is going to be 25 or later. That 2031 Minnesota first round pick, I think could be an awesome pick. That could be the best pick in this draft. And then the Charlotte pick is lottery protected this year. That's going to turn into 2 seconds because there's no way Charlotte's not going to be in the lottery. So really, I think they got Zach LaVine, a bunch of second round picks, and one good first round pick here.
Yeah, they got Zach LaVine. So now, you can build I don't know what they're going to do in terms of what their lineup's going to look like. What would you project the starting lineups can look like for the Kings going forward now?
I mean, obviously, Sabonis, LaVine's going to be in it.
DeRozan's
going to be in it. You can't move him out. I would have to think that what?
So it's sorry, Keegan. It's Keegan Murray going to the bench.
Keegan Murray's got to be in it. He's the other one that I'm thinking of. Who would you have in that fifth spot?
I mean,
who would you move in there?
Do you take Keon Ellis out?
I mean, I feel like you don't take him out, but I do wonder about positional versatility. Like, what do you look like now that you've got somebody who in Zach LaVine is a little bit of a bigger body there?
Well, right now, the starting lineup per ESPN is Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, DeMontis. And then off the bench, they have Devin Carter, Doug McDermott, and then Keon Ellis, Trey Lyles. That's their squad right now.
Who would you rather have Ellis in there?
I just don't see the point in having Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan starting.
Sure.
So none of those players play any defense, respectfully. I think Malik tries, but none of those aren't like they're just not like comparable defenders that I think you need around like Sabonis and Keegan to really make them excel. But then I think Malik Monk, funny enough, Malik can make a sneaky all-star push because he has like all of the tangible skills as a scorer and a playmaker and how dynamic he is going to the rim. I actually think him and LaVine can work well together. It's just the DeMar DeRozan fit. So like DeMar DeRozan is going to need the ball and he's going to stop the offense to shoot ISOs and to be in mid-range, even to get to the rim at times. And that's just like, is that going to really accelerate the play of Malik Monk and Zach LaVine? So if I was them, I'll be trying to get off DeMar DeRozan. I don't know what you could get for him. I don't know who around the NBA would even value him, but for me, I think there's a next step to what the Kings have right now that really could make them even better from this point on.
Right. I think and Malik Monk is interesting because I don't think obviously right now he's not being maximized. And I don't know that he can be maximized because you bring up DeMar DeRozan and how the offense works with him, where like the ball's going to stop a little bit. He's going to get a little isolation heavy. He's going to be somebody that finds himself in the mid range. And not to say that anyone's ever going to confuse Malik Monk with a lights out 3-point shooter, but he's been a really good one at points in his career. And I think that, and he's having one of his worst seasons from beyond the arc this year, shooting 33%. I do look at as if that ball movement were better there, if DeMar DeRozan were not part of that situation. I don't know if Zach LaVine necessarily makes this better. If you sub him in for DeRozan, I don't think it makes it worse, but I do wonder if that creates better opportunities for him and makes that offense flow a little bit better than what we've seen it so far this year in Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll find out. I really like the fact they were able to recoup some value and get Zach LaVine back on the roster. I think that's going to make them a lot more amendable going forward. And again, sometimes in the NBA, when you have a player that wants out, Danny, it's not about the first move. It's about the second move. And now they have more room to say that if Malik Monk, if we want to build around him and Sabonis, we can. If we want to build around LaVine and Sabonis, we can. If we want to build around DeRozan and Sabonis, we can. Or we can just not, and we can get rid of all of them. And then they could find a way to keep Malik Monk, get rid of Sabonis, and get a really nice haul for him, get something for LaVine in the future. But again, here's the thing. Like, they can also re-up LaVine's value. Like, the last half of the year, let's just paint a picture here. The Sacramento Kings, they continue to make a move up the Western Conference standings. And with that, Zach LaVine is able to play in more high-leverage situations this year than he ever has. Currently, they're in the 10th seed. They're 24-24. Okay, it's not bad. But they're only 3.5 games out of the 6th seed. So say they push themselves into the play-in over the Suns at the very least. I don't know about over the Mavericks, but over the Suns at the very least. And then you get Zach LaVine and Sabonis in a situation where they can actually play in a play-in, see if they can make some noise. And then Zach LaVine's averaging an efficient 24, 4-4 again on 44% from three like he's been with Chicago. And he's a winning player. I think you can turn Zach LaVine into an even more plus asset. And if you decide you want to move him again, you can, even with the contract that he does have. I think Zach LaVine just needs his reputation repaired outside of that cesspool that was Chicago.
Right. And I think part of it too for him is staying healthy, because you look at what he was last year, where he only played in 25 games last year, and he's been for the most part pretty healthy this year. But if he can stay healthy, I think for a full season and make what his 2023-2024 season was in terms of injury just look like a blip on the radar, something that you don't have to worry about, as opposed to if he gets injured again. Like, I think that is what teams will be looking for, because when Zach is healthy, when he's explosive, when he looks good, like, I think he's a positive player. He's a good addition to a team. Right. Like, that's the type of player he is. But I do wonder, considering that, it's not just last year that he's had injuries. Like, he had them earlier in his career. But I think that being able to stay healthy for a full season this year could be something that we see. Now, when we come back, I do want to talk about what does this fit look like in San Antonio, because they've got Wemby, they've got De'Aaron Fox, they've got a great core. So we got to do that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's show brought to you by Game Time Picks. If you want to go to a live event, a big event, maybe, I don't know, I heard there's a football game or something coming up. Maybe you want to go to that. Maybe you want to go to a basketball game in whatever city you're in. Maybe you're in San Antonio. You want to see what De'Aaron Fox looks like alongside Victor Wembanyama. Well, Game Time is the place to go if you want tickets, whether it's a concert, comedy show, sports, whatever. Finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste your time going through endless ticket listings. There's thousands of tickets out there. You just want the best deals. Game Time Picks has the best deals. The curated deals make it super simple to find the great tickets at a great price, and the super deals, prime seats, and you won't be able to believe the value. It is a steal. The seat view, also something that I love on that app, where you can select the seat you want to sit in. It's going to show you what the 50-yard line looks like, or maybe center court. Whatever you want to go to, you will see exactly what your view is going to be. So what you need to do, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off that first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. Make sure you're also signed up for your favorite team's newsletter. All the teams have newsletters. Just go to lockedondaily.com and you can get started with the all-new free Locked On newsletter every single weekday in your inbox. But the De'Aaron Fox trade to San Antonio means Swipa Victor Wembanyama might have a legitimate running mate, maybe a little earlier in his career than we expected when he was coming out in the draft. But how do you see him and De'Aaron Fox fitting together?
Well, here's the thing is the Spurs, they are aware of the timeline, and they're not pushing all their chips in. This is the smart thing about what the Spurs did. De'Aaron Fox, he's 27. He literally just turned 27 44 days ago. Let's say De'Aaron Fox, he's averaging 25, 6, 5, and 6 this year. He's only shooting 47, 32, 83. Let's say he just gets even more efficient as the year goes on. He stays about those numbers. And the Spurs, because again, they have a very competent team around them, they're able to stay where they are, able to hopefully, in their estimation, sneak into the play-in. And they sneak into the play-in this year, and they're able to say, you know what, we're going to give it our best shot. They can win in the play-in, see if they can get into a playoff series, and then get Victor Wembanyama some very early experience. Again, like if you look at the West, the Spurs are the 12th seed. They're only 2 games out of the 10th seed. And again, it's going to have a lot of stuff that's going to have to happen. I'm actually going to say this. The sneaky fall team here that I'm looking at, the teams that could fall out of the play-in altogether will be the Suns. The Suns look like a nightmare. They look like a nightmare right now. And you're telling me that if De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, if they can figure it out, I think they can push themselves into at least competing to get that 10th seed, 9th seed. And then now you got a legitimate number 2 next to Victor Wembanyama that can help him figure out situational basketball in the playoffs, in high-level situations. And again, one of the reasons De'Aaron Fox wanted out of Sacramento, y'all, is he's won 3 playoff games in 8 years so far. because he was in Sacramento. And so for him, this gives him a legitimate option that you're playing next to, in my estimation. Victor Wembanyama is going to be in conversation for first team All NBA this year. He's at worst a top 10 player in the NBA.
Yes.
Now you get a legitimate superstar trajectory player that's a bona fide shooter, that's an elite defensive player, and that you can pick and roll with, pick and pop with, that you can run down screens for, like that you can post up with. I mean, you name it. I'm very excited to see how this works. And I truly think that the San Antonio Spurs are doing the right thing by Victor by putting him in situations to learn how to win young, where they're not actually having to empty the war chest like they could at some point in time.
Right. I do wonder if they weren't as good as they are right now. So as we sit here and record this, they're 21 and 25 in the season, which they're, not a title contender as is right now, I don't think we would say, but they're a playoff contender. And I wonder if they were a team that had a record maybe like 17 and 28 instead, if they're still interested in making this move right now, or if they're more apt to wait until the summer and see what their options look like then, because they know what they have in Victor. But I think that the rest of this team, and maybe it's because Victor has elevated this team to such a level, and I certainly think that having veterans like Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes have helped that roster grow and mature a little bit into a team that is a much more serious team about winning than a team that's been in the tank for the past several years. But I do wonder if they do that without what the growth that we've seen so far this year. The Suns falling out of the play-in, I think is sneaky interesting. Like how bad, because things are not good there right now. And I think that the next couple of days for them are very interesting because we got more news with Jimmy Butler that we'll get to in a little bit that could affect the Suns in some way. But how they handle the next couple of days, I think is going to answer that question. If they make a move that I don't even know that it needs to improve the team. Maybe it needs to improve the vibes more than anything. Like if that happens, it might be hard for me to see a Kevin Durant led team falling out of the plane. But if they don't, man, I
could have wouldn't
where
be
you're
up to
coming
KD
from.
though. But that's the thing; it's not up to KD. Like I think this season has shown it's not up to KD. They don't have the in-house culture that you need to win. Their players are crumbling around them. They are not cohesive. They're not having career seasons. I think Devin Booker struggled a large part of this year, even though I think he's been very good. It's not his fault, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. Right. I think that Mike Budenholzer, they're trying to instruct a new identity and culture in that team, and it's taken a little bit to catch up. And then Yusuf Nurkic has been unplayable for large swaths of the NBA season. And then they're trying to rely on Mason Plumlee behind him. Their big man situation is probably one of the worst in the NBA in total. Yusuf Nurkic is ideally a very good center in spots. And I would say he's an above average replacement center, which should be good enough as a starter.
And he's like their fourth string center right now.
100%. So you're devoting that much money. I want to say it's like $19 million to Nurkic, if I remember the exact money amount. And on top of that, like Bradley Beal, he's coming off the bench. He's starting. Bradley Beal's open to a trade with the Heat. Are the Heat going to want to actually accept the trade for Bradley Beal? No. So then everybody's in flux. Who's going to be here? Then we're losing at the same time. Like they just lost to Portland. So I truly just think this team like is in a situation where they legitimately, it just might get blown up on them. And I don't know. I'm not blaming KD for that. I think KD had a very good season, but there's only so much one man, especially a 36-year-old superstar, can do.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the culture piece because I think that's a good segue to get into what we heard about the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. So they were in Cleveland. Obviously, I host Locked On Cavs. I cover that team. I'm at all their home games. I was there for Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison's joint press conference before their game against the Cavs where they lost by 41. And that's enough coverage of that game. The Cavs set a bunch of offensive records. They were fantastic. Dallas looked like they didn't want to be there. And that's, if you want more, go to Locked On Cavs, go to Locked On Mavs. But they talk so much about the AD swap with Luka being a better cultural fit. Like they tried so hard to tell us that Luka Doncic did not fit the culture that they want in Dallas, but would not actually say Luka Doncic did not fit the culture that they want in Dallas. It was one of the more bizarre press conferences I've ever been in.
So if anyone's watched the show yesterday, you saw me on there. And we actually had a really good show. It was a spectacular show, man. Like, I think that the biggest thing, without rehashing everything that I'll bring up for what happened with the Dallas situation, is they just didn't want Luka anymore. That's like the ultimate takeaway. They legitimately just didn't want nothing to do with Luka. And Luka, for as many things as he does really well, as Gavin laid out very emphatically yesterday, they're just tired of the mess. They're tired of the lack of conditioning, the lack of consistency, the on-court complaining, the NBA Finals, as Brian Windhorst are very acutely and just, I think, succinctly said, Luka literally had possessions and halves and sequences during the finals where he cost them the game. And I think Nico Harrison is looking at this, and then the ownership is looking at all the years of stuff about Luka and saying, we're out of the Luka sweepstakes. We want nothing more to do with this. We're not giving him $345 million. And then if the push came to shove and Luka ever wanted to kind of bend us over about the contract and he doesn't want to sign it, well, we're not even going to deal with it. And so we're just going to ship him out. But here's the thing, Danny, that makes this so not nefarious. That's too strong, but definitely doesn't feel the greatest if you're a Mavs fan. On top of the trade, he traded him to a friend. Rob Pelinka,
right.
He noted they have been friends for 20 years, and they just struck up a conversation one day, and they decided that this is going to be the trade, and they're only going to communicate between those two.
Right. So he mentioned during his press conference that this popped up when those two were getting coffee one day. He didn't specify where they got coffee at, but they got coffee together, and that the Lakers were the only team that Nico talked to. And I could not believe that he admitted on the record in a press conference into a microphone with the entire world watching, yeah, we only actually called the Lakers about this. Like, we decided 3 or 4 weeks, and he said it was a process that took 3 or 4 weeks to get done since that initial conversation, that in those 3 or 4 weeks, only one team was told about this, and this team was the Los Angeles Lakers. Like, that to me was probably the most jarring aspect. Once I got over the initial shock, just that Luka Doncic got traded, a 5-time first team All-NBA player got traded in the middle of the night. Hearing this, I think, was the most stunning thing, is that they didn't search for better offers. They called the Lakers and said, you want him? And I mean, they got Anthony Davis, which obviously he's a great player in his own right, but they didn't shop him around. And that's what I was really stunned by.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about on the other side with this, but I have way more thoughts on this.
Yes, we will do that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season heating up. It's hot already, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings, Prize Picks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. So here's how it works. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. And the best part, Prize Picks keeps it simple. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds. That's about the time I'm going to talk about Prize Picks here. And their fast, secure withdrawals mean that you get paid quickly when you win. Plus, their Taco Tuesday promo gives you discounted player projections for even more value. So check out the promos tab, and you can tail any of the super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups. That's right. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest content from us here. And Swipa, about that Luka trade, there's really a ton to get into. And the press conference, the fact that they only talked to Lakers, like, that is the one thing that I guess I just can't get over here.
Well, I think this is why it is important for everyone to understand. And I mean this in life in general and in basketball, Danny. Many things are not actually about meritocracy, because if they were, that would have been an open bid for the entire NBA.
Right.
This was about nepotism, relationships, friendship, and trust. He trusted Rob Pelinka. Number one, They also self-admitted this, I believe, in the press conference. The reason why they did not open up the conversation for everybody else or inform Luka about the trade is that Luka could then demand a trade if it was to get wind of it, that he could be moved somewhere he didn't want to be, and then now everything is out of his hands. So Nico's brain says, well, okay, I don't want him here. He's a problem. We don't need him here anymore. We don't want to pay him. But instead of letting it get out, and then the narrative starts swirling about what you're trying to get little Luka Doncic. Let me tell you, there have been executives that have responded to many of the national media members, and all the executives said, we knew that they were in the trade discussions, the Mavericks, but they were asking for another center or just additional role players. Nico never brought up Luka Doncic. And there were multiple execs that have said that if Luka was on the table, they would have traded any and everything in their firepower to get him on their team. So I think on that extent, if you're going to trade Luka, you should have done right by the entire organization and to launch them into the greenest pastures ever. You have a 25-year-old superstar who just took you to the finals. You should walk away with all of the Houston Rockets assets, all of the Thunder's assets, all of the Nets assets, everything. Matter of fact, you got to get another team involved because I want him to. They should have been able to hold the NBA at ransom for Luka Doncic, and you sell him to the highest bidder, and then now the Mavs, even though they don't have Luka, for the next 10 years, we're flush out of nowhere all of a sudden.
Right. They should have been able to, because we've never seen, at least not in my memory, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I can't think of a player that should have had more trade value on the open market than what Luka should have had, because this is a 25-year-old, already a 5-time first-team All-NBA. I mean, the 5 straight years, and this year he won't be because of injuries, but for the past 5 years, he's been voted a top 5 player in the NBA. And Anthony Davis is awesome, but like, this is an underwhelming return. They should have gotten the trade return of all trade returns. Like, Oklahoma City has 20 tradable first round picks. They all should have been in Dallas. Or you brought up Houston. What could San Antonio have given up? If I'm running San Antonio, I give up every single thing other than Victor Wembanyama that I possibly have. Like, those are the types of things that could have happened, but because of the trust, because of all that, because of the friendship, it didn't happen. And it's wild to me.
And I want to say this too, and I mean this, because Lakers fans, I want to address you and say that I'm happy for you and that you get to watch another generational basketball player in your midst. You traded for Wilt, and it worked out. He was amazing. You got Kareem in a trade at 28 years old. He was amazing. You then drafted Magic. Then you got Shaq in his prime because, hey, we're going to pay him. He's the man, whatever. You got him. You traded for Kobe. And then LeBron decided he wants to live in LA and you get LeBron. And then because LeBron's there, AD wants to get there. So now you're in a situation where you get Luka Doncic. So I want to say, I hope you appreciate the fact that you're in where you're located. You're in LA. That's the only reason this franchise is relevant. Their ownership has been bad. Their front offices, remember the Mitch Kupchak days and Jeannie Buss and her brother? After Dr. Buss died, they were a wreck. And they have not been run well since, except for they've had really great drafts in the second rounds, especially, but also they had LeBron James. But I want to say this for the rest of the league, man. Like, this is why it's so hard to be small markets. And Danny, you understand this very well.
Mm-hmm.
You struggle for years to get generational players in your building. The Mavericks got one in Dirk in the late 90s. And then literally as Dirk is about to retire, Luka falls into their arms because the teams ahead of them felt way better about Trae Young, about Marvin Bagley, about DeAndre Ayton. So, which is fine. Like, it's fine. Trae ended up being a really good player. He was taken after Luka. Like, they're still really good players. But all of this stuff, like, you don't get these players. And then to think that your front office was somebody who just works for that team, that they just take your baby, your player that you have worked and really just like you've toiled through, and 25 years old, and then they just hand them to the LA Lakers. That is like one of the biggest sins in sports, is when you're a team that is not one of the Lakers or Boston's, and you have a guy, and at their apex, Evan Mobley to the Boston Celtics, here's Evan Mobley. We'll take back Drew Holiday. Thank you so much. 1 first-round pick. Like, you don't do stuff like that because you have more respect for who you're representing, which is also the fans, not just ownership and the powers that be. So I'm legitimately like heartbroken for Dallas Mavericks fan. Even though Anthony Davis, by the way, I think they're going to be incredible. I think they're going to be a lot better than people realize. They're going to be a stout defense, but I really love they got 4 ball handlers with Kyrie, Spencer Dinwiddie. They're going to have Jalen Hardy. They got Quentin Grimes. And then on top of that, having Najee Marshall, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, having Derek Lively when he comes back, having Daniil Gafford, and then adding Anthony Davis to that, they're going to be a force still.
Right. It's just that window got so much shorter. Like, instead of having a generational talent for the next 10 years, because as we've mentioned, Luka's 25, Anthony Davis is 31, going to turn 32. Like, that's the big difference there. Aside from Luka's a better player, but like, I think Dallas is still going to be really good. I wouldn't look at what happened to them on the court on Sunday as any indication. I think that was a team that was pretty shell-shocked and didn't necessarily want to be playing a game on Sunday, but I think that they're going to be good. And I'm curious how they look. And I do wish that they had another game against OKC this year with this new look Dallas Mavericks team to see how that would look, because they've matched up super well against OKC. And does that change now that Anthony Davis is involved? Like, that's the one thing that I look at as them possibly coming out of the West. But we did have a handful of games that we should at least touch on. I think the most interesting of them today that happened was the Boston Celtics taking on Philly. So Boston was down big. They had a comeback win. Let's hear from our friend John Corrales over at Locked On Celtics to hear what he had to say about this win.
For most of 3 quarters, the Boston Celtics were sluggish. They were embarrassing, and it looked like they were on their way to a really brutal loss in Philly. It took them more than 31 minutes to score 54 points. And then, with a few minutes to go, they started a run to outscore the Sixers 54-20 over the last 15 minutes of the game. So in some sense, you could say this is a classic good team coasting for 3 quarters against the bad team and then turning it on, getting the win, and going home. They won by 8. It's their 3rd win in a row. Jason Tatum was a monster in the second half, a monster in the 4th quarter. Jaylen Brown had some big baskets there to close things out. The Celtics defense on Maxey was incredible down the stretch, and the Celtics get the win. So wasn't pretty. It's not something to write home about, but when you're the Celtics and you've been struggling to get these wins lately, this is a nice one to take with you on your way to Cleveland and see if you can close out this road trip with a win. And I would expect some better effort against the top-seeded Cavs.
Celtics outscored the Sixers 38-16 in the 4th quarter. John's right about that defense. I mean, watching the end of that game, what Drew Holiday was doing to Tyrese Maxey was wildly impressive. It's just, why doesn't that happen more often, I think, is kind of the question with this Boston Celtics team.
They're just playing down to their competition.
I mean, isn't that the truth? Elsewhere in the association, the Toronto Raptors beat the LA Clippers, who have been playing really good basketball lately, 115-108. Here is our friend Sean.
The Raptors win again. Sean with the here. Locked On Raptors. Quick thoughts on the Raptors taking down the LA Clippers. A good team. 115-108 on Sunday to get back to their winning ways after their 5-game losing streak ended on Friday against the Chicago Bulls. Big takeaway from this one, the Raptors' defense was fantastic in this game, and their starting lineup, which has not played a ton of minutes together this year. Obviously, Emmanuel Quickley has missed a ton of time. He was on a minutes restriction, and this one barely played in the second half. But the starting lineup of Emmanuel Quickley, R.J. Barrett, Grady Dick, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, finally getting some run together these last couple games since Quickley came back from yet another injury. And they've looked really good. Easily their best 20-minute subset in a very small 80-minute sample on the season. But the defense, which is the big question with them, has looked really stout. R.J. Barrett, Grady Dick making real strides on that end after being kind of miserable for most of the season. We'll see if it sticks, but if this group can hang defensively, as we saw in this game as they carved up the Clippers defense, the number 2 defense in the NBA. There's something here with this group. We may not see it fully fleshed out this year, as the Raptors are certainly going to kind of go into a soft tank at some point here post-deadline. But if the starters keep playing together, it might be kind of hard to tank on purpose.
I don't know if they're going to go into a soft tank. I feel like the whole year has been a medium tank there, but they've been playing better lately.
They're 8-2 in the last 10 games, and
They've been playing better.
Their defense has been way better. Scotty Barnes has been back. They're balling. They're playing really well.
Elsewhere, Detroit beat Chicago. Cade Cunningham had 22 points, 15 assists. He was named to the All-Star team this week, very much deserving. I've just been so impressed with what he's doing. I think when they get another creator for him, that team's going to take off. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but I just think Detroit's going to be a problem for years to come with Cade.
100%. I think Cade Cunningham is going to be a future. He's going to be in talks for first team All-NBA at some point.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And then the last game of the night, Memphis beats Milwaukee 132-119. This game was back and forth. Memphis outscored the Bucks 39-20 in the fourth quarter. Jaren Jackson Jr., 37 points. I believe he hit 7 threes in this one. Just an incredible performance by him.
Yeah, he was going right at the MVP in that fourth quarter. So it was a great fourth quarter from them.
I was surprised too that the Bucks didn't have Giannis defend Triple J more. It seemed as if they had Brook Lopez on him a little bit more than I'd like if I were a Bucks fan. I get Giannis is a better help defender than an on-ball defender, but they had no answer for him. And at that point, I just would like to see the one-time defensive player of the year defend him.
Yeah, I understand that.
Well, keep it locked here because there will be more discussion on trades. There's Jimmy Butler news that's floating around out there. There will be more games tomorrow night. So keep it locked right here on Locked On NBA. Every game, every night, a little bit over 30 minutes, but we did our best. We will talk to you soon.